Welcome back to r/maliciouscompliance. In this Reddit story, imagine your new boss calling your entire team useless and demanding you all resign or face termination for cause. Well, my team and I decided to give her exactly what she asked for. And the first one is titled, Karen Boss demanded my entire team resigns, so we complied. So I work in Taiwan for a manufacturer that designs and assembles smart bike components. Not software, physical products, think hubs, torque sensing, bottom brackets, integrated battery packs, the stuff that makes a normal bicycle a decent e-commuter. It's a niche where almost all good enough means warranty returns and angry distributors. We basically sell to regional brands that slap their sticker on our cranksets and motor units and then ship them to shops around Asia. I lead the line integration team. Not glamorous, we are the people who take engineering's drawings and purchasing BOMs and turn them into checklist jigs and work instructions that operators can actually use. We own the calibration benches, the torque tables, the insulation resistance tests that keep batteries from becoming hand warmers, and we certify suppliers and do first article runs. If someone drops a screw on the magnetizer station and the torque sensor goes wonky, we are the ones who figure out why the output drifted and stop 500 units of scrap before it happens. No one outside operations ever notices us. That is the point though, we are mostly Korean expats and Taiwanese locals because the founder hired a bunch of us years ago after a failed JV with a Korean e-bike startup. It made sense, the Korean side had strong motor assembly discipline. We kept the good habits and built our own. We're not perfect, but our scrap rate was envy level low and our rework cell was usually bought, and then the founder sold the majority control. He stayed on as a consultant, but a board-appointed new blood CEO came in and she brought with her a VP of operations. I won't use her real name, I will just call her Karen because I need a label and she earned it. She is Chinese, PRC to be specific. I would not care if she were a Martian, but it matters because she made it matter. The first time she walked the floor, she didn't ask what we did, she asked where we were from. Not which department, not what is this cell, she asked nationalities. I watched her face when one of our team answered Korean. It was like someone had told her the parts were cursed. On day one, she asked for org charts and who actually creates value versus consumes budget. Okay, fair question. I sent her a one-page slide showing what my team owned: line balance, jig design, calibration, supplier approvals, first article sign-off, work instruction revisions, torque audit, ESD monitoring, and end-of-line test. I put numbers next to them, defect density before and after we implemented, throughput before and after, yield by supplier batch, and I didn't expect a thank you exactly, but I expected her to at least ask something technical, but she responded with, "Why do we need a separate integration team? Engineering designs, production builds, QA inspects, you guys are overhead." The production supervisor sent me a private message saying, "Brace." But it got worse. She put me into a cost-down discussion with HR. There were 3 printer tables. One had salaries, one had headcounts, and one had criticality rankings that I'd never seen before. HR looked uncomfortable. Karen didn't. She said, "Your group earns too much for Taiwan wages. Also, we suspect conflicts of interest and cultural friction." I asked what conflicts of interest meant and she said, "You Koreans are clustered together. This is not good for company culture. I don't like foreigners messing with the culture." I asked what exactly she wanted and she said, "Restructure, remove redundant functions, integration is redundant." I pointed out that the last time an OEM tried to let engineering write the work instructions without us, it resulted in 300 motor units with flipped Hall sensor connectors and a total recall. She said, "Those are excuses. We need speed and cost down. If the team is valuable, they should prove it by not existing." I wish I was making that line up. And yeah, I thought she was testing boundaries. The founder, still haunting the building as a consultant, told me to stay calm, that he would talk to her, and he did. She smiled at him, nodded, and then sent me an email BCCing half the board saying, "All integration activities are to be transitioned directly to engineering and production effective immediately. Integration team to provide all documentation and assist in handover. Deadline, end of month." I replied with a plan to transition gradually, pair up our engineers with production leads, do dry runs on second shifts, gate the handover with first article pass and run charts. I tried to be cooperative. I listed out what could break if we rushed: torque drift without recall matrix updates, station safety interlocks not configured, torque drivers needing bi-weekly calibration, the oscilloscope script we use on the motor controller to catch intermittent comp faults. Basically, I was not asking to save our jobs, I was trying to save the line from becoming a bonfire. Her answer: "You don't need to teach them, they can read. Please don't exaggerate your importance." That is when she started making it explicitly ugly. She would walk stations and switch to Mandarin when addressing Taiwanese operators, and then refer to us as Korean group in a way that was not neutral. She joked about Korean dramas in a tone that was not joking. She copied legal on random threads implying we resisted management. HR kept their heads down, and I documented quietly. Every time she said something that would look bad later, I wrote a factual summary and emailed it to myself. So then came the meeting that pushed it from insulting to malicious. She booked a conference room with HR and the founder, who sat there looking like he wanted to vaporize, and my entire team. She pulled out a stack of papers labeled "Voluntary Resignation Agreement, Transition Bonus." She said, "I'm asking all of you to resign voluntarily. Effective end of month. You will receive 1 month of salary as goodwill. If you do not resign, we will go through disciplinary processes and termination for cause." I asked on what cause, and she said, "Redundancy, poor attitude, and non-cooperation." I said, "That's not cause." She said, "This is Taiwan. Do you want to test?" I watched HR look at the table. I felt my stomach do that slow roll it does when your blood pressure spikes. I did not want a fight that I couldn't win, but I also knew the one card I had. She wanted us gone before the next big batch run for our biggest customer, a Japanese brand that demanded 0.3% field failure rates and sent auditors who wore white gloves and smiled like knives. They loved our line because our numbers made them look good. They would not love a line without us when battery pack insulation resistance dipped below spec because someone did not dry the potting compound long enough. Well, malicious compliance clicked into place in my head like a ratchet. She had made a demand: resign voluntarily, the or else was termination for cause. Taiwanese labor law is not a toy, but I was not gonna argue technicalities with a manager who had already decided that we were trash. She also wanted a clean handover with our documentation. Fine, we complied, but we complied in a way that followed every instruction and nothing more. Literal, technical, nothing to blame us for, because she would blame us. So we made sure when she did, every email reply would be a screenshot of her own directives. Step number 1, we agreed as a team that we would all resign together and honor the handover exactly as written. No sabotage, no deleted files or something, no petty stuff, just exactly what she asked for, which was documentation and a handover by the deadline. Step number 2, we wrote documentation but no context that was needed to understand everything. No, if you see this odd symptom, do this, pro tips. Because we were not asked to train, we were just asked to provide documentation, so we did exactly that. And if you've ever used a test stand, you know, documentation without a mentor is a webcam without a network. It exists, it's even useful, but it doesn't teach you what you don't know you don't know. Step number 3, we made sure that we delivered everything to her. We scheduled a formal handover, we recorded it, and we talked through the documents. We answered questions at face value. When she asked, "This torque is always 2.2 Newton-meter, right?" we said, per Ref 13 of the work instruction, yes. We did not add, unless the supplier's worm gear batch is from vendor B's lot code 24H, in which case you need to set 2.4 Newton-meters on the first 10 units and check the torque angle curves to see if the loop threads spike and then revert. Because, well, that was not in the documents, because we were not asked to train, because she said people could read. Step number 4, we removed our physical presence in a way that hurt exactly no one except the process. We cleaned our desks, we labeled our calibration kits and placed them on the rack. We checked in all shop tools that had our personal labels on them. We removed our personal torque leads and we left the cheap ones that were company property. We returned our visitor supplier badges and we archived our emails properly, and we disabled our personal accounts preemptively and handed over to IT with a smile. We complied with the exact wording of her demand. We resigned, we handed over documents, and we gave back the property. And we did it on time, and we did it professionally. We left nothing that she could call sabotage. Then we watched, or rather heard through the words of a friend that still worked there. The first thing that hit them was so predictable, I would have bet my scooter on it. The line ran with our instructions, and on day 2, the yield dropped. Not dramatically like a tire with a slow leak. Battery packs flagged for low insulation resistance started coming back from end of the line. The work instructions said, bake potting compound 2 hours at 80 degrees before pour. But no one told them that if humidity that week was above a certain level, and yes, we tracked that because this is Taiwan, and humidity is not a concept, it's a roommate, you need 3 hours. And the EOL tech dutifully flagged them. QA held them. Production called engineering, who said, we followed the document. Engineering started to revise the document. We couldn't help, we didn't work there. Then the torque sensors on the BB unit started drifting, and again, the work instruction was correct. Calibrate monthly using standard load, but the motor control firmware ref they pushed last quarter had a quirk where the bench needed a fresh linearization after any firmware flash. We kept a sticky note that said, do recall if board ref X, not in the official document though. Because engineering did not want if this then that on official docs. It was just an internal memo. The internal memo was in my head and they shipped a batch of wobbly sensors. The Japanese customer flagged it incoming. They sent a polite email with a graph that was basically a middle finger. Our sales lead called me and I told him the answer. He said, can you tell them? I said, I don't work there anymore. He laughed, and then he didn't. Karen sent me a message through HR asking if I could clarify a few points for the team as a so-called final courtesy. I responded with a copy of my resignation letter and the phrase, as per your direction, my employment ended on this date. I cannot provide services without a contract. She replied with a short, understood, and then she went cold. I could practically hear her grinding teeth, and then came the supplier melt. We had 2 motor stator suppliers, A and B, and A was reliable. B was cheaper, but their varnish curse process sometimes left microscopic flakes that the magnetizer station hated. The fix was simple though, we blow off each stator with ionized air before placing it on the magnetizer, and we do a magnetization test on 1 in 10 from B. We had a spreadsheet for this, and we never put it in the official doc because, well, their production manager might be embarrassed and because we didn't want to trip compliance language that would require a formal supplier corrective action. In short, it was a handshake fix that saved everyone face. No one did the blow-off. The magnetizer started snarling every few dozen units and the operator wrote a note. Engineering wrote a task and production said, no resources. The line slowed. Sales asked why shipments were late and Karen said, operators are slow. Operators started leaving. Well, because people don't like being blamed for things they cannot fix. The company was going to and through hell. Then came the audit. Our Japanese customers' auditors, the ones with the white gloves, arrived. They are polite, but they ask questions like, why is your CPK on torque trending down? What is your control plan for humidity during potting? Show me the last 3 weeks of end of failure Pareto. They had seen our smooth machine for years. They expected a smooth running machine, but they did not get one. They saw missing data in the torque audit logs, and because the person who used to run the torque audits and copy them to the shared drive was me, they asked where the integration team was. Engineering said, we restructured. The auditors looked at the scrap card. Auditors then looked at their calendar and said that they needed to shorten the visit. On the way out, they told sales that they were reducing orders to almost 0 until process stability improved. That sucked oxygen out of the whole building. At this point, the company was basically ruined unless they could get competent people back in. I heard all this secondhand at first. Old colleagues texted, the founder, bless him, sent me a "can we talk" message. We got coffee at a shop around the corner. He looked tired in that way a man looks when his house is on fire, and he sold the hose. He asked if I would consider consulting for a month to help them stabilize, and I asked under whose authority, and he said, mine. I asked if Karen was on board. He looked at the table, and I told him I would not walk into a place where we were called useless and be used as a scapegoat if the fixes took longer than a week. He said he understood. He also said that he felt responsible because he had hired her. He asked me to think about the operators, not management, and that the company was taking a dangerous course towards potential bankruptcy if this incompetence continued. That landed. I started to feel like a jerk even though I knew that we had not caused the mess. But I also knew going back under her would be asking for another ambush. I did not go back, not then, and then the thing happened and turned this from predictable slow-motion wreck to company-level panic. The battery packs kept failing AR checks, but now one passed IR and still tripped the thermal fuse in the field. It did not explode, it just died, tiny mercy, but it hit social media in Japan because the brand was known and some guy posted a picture of his e-commuter dying on a hill. The comments were not kind. The brand sent a formal letter that used words like shiphold and penalties and corrective action plan. The kind of letter that makes CFOs stare at middle distance. A board meeting was called. I was not in it obviously, but I heard via two people that the CFO asked one question. How did this happen? And well, someone said, the integration team left. The board asked, why? Someone pulled up the voluntary resignation forms. Someone else pulled up the email where Karen wrote, "Please stop exaggerating your importance." I was not there, but a friend in legal told me you could feel the temperature drop like a freezer door opened. You never want a board to find out that the person they brought in to cut costs created the risk they are now paying for. Right after that meeting, legal called me, not HR, but legal. They asked if I would be willing to do a short-term contract to stabilize end-of-line testing and podding process. I asked again, under whose authority? And they said, the board acting through the founder, not through operations. I said, put that in writing. Also, anything I say needs to be implemented without operational veto. Also my team. Your team resigned. They said, I know. If you want the fixes in days, not months, you need the people who know where the bodies are buried. They called back with a number. It was more than I made before. It included a clause that said, operational changes authorized by consultant will not be delayed without board sign-off. It also included a line that made me smile saying, consultant is not to be managed by VP of operations during term. I'm not stupid, I knew this could become political dynamite. But I also knew the operators were not the villains here and they were the ones sweating on a humid line being told to speed up while the testers were screaming. So I said yes, but not as an employee. As a contractor for a defined short-term scope, fix plotting IR failures, re-establish torque audit discipline, recall the BB calibration benches, and write an emergency idiot-proof check for the magnetizer station that anyone could run. And I brought two of my old teammates as subcontractors. We walked in on a Monday morning, the line looked tired, the production supervisor hugged me in a way that said, please don't let me cry here. And the operators looked away because they didn't want to get in trouble for being happy that we came. Karen stood near the board with a look like someone had dumped cold noodles on her head. She handed me a badge that said visitor on it. I wore it like a crown. We did not grandstand here, we just did the work. First we pulled humidity data for the past 2 weeks. Surprised there were spikes. The AC had a minor failure and maintenance set it to run lower to save energy while they waited for a part. That then made the potting oven struggle. The fix was temporarily extend bake to 3 hours when humidity X factor and add a $5 desiccant cartridge to each potting container as a stopgap. I wrote it into an emergency revision. I printed it and I had the production supervisor sign it. I emailed the board alias and we started seeing IR pass rates return to normal by day 3. Second, the torque audits. The drivers had missed 2 scheduled calibrations. We pulled the drivers, ran them on our bench. One was out of spec by just 0.1 Newton meters, not huge, but enough to drift the torque angle window. We swapped it for a spare calibrated one and set the old one for service. We posted a sign on the rack saying, do not use drivers without green tag. We printed a red tag for every uncalibrated driver, and yes, that was kindergarten level. That's what you do when you need to stop the bleeding. And third, the BB calibration. We flashed 3 controllers to the new firmware and then ran the linearization. The curves looked like a drunk snake before and then like a textbook. We wrote a 1-page, if you flash this ref, do this recall. We taped it to the bench, we emailed it to engineering, and we inserted it into the change log. We delivered a paper copy to the Q&A manager and had him sign that he received it. You cannot assume anything when the cultural instinct is to avoid blame. Fourth, the magnetizer. We pulled 5 status from B, we blew them with ionized air and we ran them and the snarl disappeared. I literally wrote a post-it note saying, blow off B lots, and then I turned it into a formal line item. Step 2.1, ionized air blow off for B supplier, see supplier code on barcode. I sent it to purchasing with a note saying, if you want to stop doing this, stop buying B. Purchasing wrote back, A is 7% more expensive. I wrote, scrap is 12%. We stabilized, shipments resumed, and the Japanese customer took us off hold. They demanded a root cause and we gave them one that was honest: humidity process control drift plus calibration discipline failure. They asked what we did and we gave them the steps. They nodded, they didn't smile, but they didn't frown either. They told us to send them a photo of the magnetizer station with the new blow-off step, and we did. Meanwhile, internally, the knives were out. Karen started telling anyone who would listen that consultants are making a simple process look complicated. She said that she always planned these fixes, she just needed time. The funny thing about emails, it has dates, and the board had the dates, and they also had our results. A week later I walked past the conference room and saw Karen with the board members. The founder caught my eye and gave a tiny nod. I kept walking. Later that day I saw Karen with a brown envelope and a security badge. I did not cheer, I'm not 20, but I did text my team, weather change, and she was gone by the end of the day. Not escorted out in handcuffs or something, just gone. In AD, her name flipped to disabled. People asked each other in whispers, relief is quiet when it's real. Now the obvious question though, if this is malicious compliance, where does the we comply and they suffer part end? Because at this point we had compliant, resigned voluntarily, they suffered, process collapse, client hold, board fury, and we'd been dragged back to fix it. You could argue that we actually won. Except we didn't want to win by saving a management structure that called us useless and targeted us for being Korean. We did our contracted scope, we handed over stabilized processes, we trained 2 production leads on torque audits and the calibration bench, and we wrote the kind of documentation that includes contingencies this time, with flows like, if humidity sensor reads X to Y, not because the company deserved it, but because the operators did. We included a line that said ask integration, and then we crossed it out and wrote ask production engineering. It felt like leaving a note for a kid moving into your room after you, and then we left again. Not because we wanted to be dramatic, but because our contract ended and we had other plans. While all this was happening, a distributor we had been close with reached out to me. He wanted to know if we were open to helping a new shop line. He had 3 brands in Southeast Asia that wanted to diversify away from our old employer because they hated the drama and they did not want a giant. They wanted a small team that could build a line that ran like a quiet refrigerator. He said, I can get you the first 2 POs if you can deliver a mid-drive motor unit that hits X torque and Y efficiency at set price, and if you promise not to ghost your customers when your VP decides to play politics. We laughed and then stopped laughing because it was not crazy. My team had savings, we had contacts with suppliers, the good ones, and we had a spreadsheet of line gear we would need to start small. And we had our brains. We also had a seething desire to never again have to hear someone who has never set foot in an end-of-line cell say the word redundant at us. We incorporated a small company, not a fancy office, a rented unit in an industrial park in Taoyuan that used to make fans. We bought 2 torque benches, 1 magnetizer, a basic potting oven, and a humidity sensor we promised to actually look at. We did not try to be a full OEM, we called ourselves an integration and assembly shop specialized in zero-drama launches. Engineering could be done by our clients, and we would take their designs and build the line, validate it, and run first production until the line stabilized. If they want us to stay as contract manufacturer, we would do it. If they wanted to take it in-house, we would train their people and walk away. We pitched it to the distributor and he put us in front of one of the brands. They were skeptical at first, but we brought torque curves, failure Pareto charts and photos of ESD shoes. We did not do a glossy check, we showed them the checklists and they laughed and said, we hate gloss. Can you hit 95% first pass yield by batch 3? And we said yes, and they said, we will give you a small PO and a penalty if you miss. I won't bore you with them month by month. We argued about what to buy, used versus new, we ate lunch standing up more days than we sat down, and we shipped the first batch. The first pass was not 95%, it was 92%. We got a nasty email. We fixed the 2 biggest failure modes, a solder joint on the Hall harness that wasn't seating perfectly, and a burr in a motor housing that chewed the cable, and batch 3 hit 96%. The brand posted a quiet thank you on their dealer forum, and word got around. We got a call from a European brand wanting to source in Asia without flying the entire process engineering crew out for a month. We took the job with the condition that we ran the first 3 batches, and they agreed. We hired 3 more operators and paid them above market with bonuses tied to scrap, because we are not idiots and we remember being them. Meanwhile, our old employer tried to stabilize post-Karen. They promoted a production engineer into a process lead role, and he's a decent guy. He texted me occasionally with questions. I answered when I felt like it and ignored the ones that were basically, "come bail us again." Their Japanese customer returned in cautious steps. They lost a couple of other clients who didn't have the patience to ride the learning curve, and the founder apologized to me twice. I told him I was not angry anymore, it was mostly true. As for Karen, the last I heard, she tried to land at a giant ODM in Shenzhen. I don't know if she did. Stories travel. If she's reading this, I want to say, you wanted us gone because we were useless and paid too much? We went and you got what you asked for. The company almost went bankrupt because of you. You got fired and we started our own shop and built something solid. Not because we are geniuses, but because we do the boring parts right. And the next one is another fantastic malicious compliance story, which is titled, "My appointment was cancelled for being 5 minutes late. I guess I have to reschedule." And by the way guys, if you enjoy these XXL malicious compliance stories, then please don't forget to like the video, since that would help me tremendously. Either way, this happened about 4 years ago when I got a summer job at my university. The job was working for professors that I had worked with before, and they asked me last minute to teach a summer workshop to 9th and 10th graders. So with less than 2 weeks before the camp starts, I got a bunch of paperwork to do first, including clearances that say I can work with kids. One of these is an official FBI background check for which they need my fingerprints. Well, I needed to do the physical fingerprinting right away in order to get the result in time. Luckily, I was able to book a fingerprinting appointment for that Friday, book 24 hours in advance as required, which would be just barely enough time to get the result. That Friday, I catch the subway to campus and it's atrociously slow. I'll admit I should have planned for this, the subway here is always behind. Anyway, I end up slightly late getting to campus, so I literally run to the police station and enter the front room at exactly 5 minutes after my appointment time. I know this because as I stepped through the door, I felt my phone buzz with what turned out to be a "your appointment has been cancelled" email. I then speak to the security/cop behind bulletproof glass inside, and I learn the appointment was cancelled after he checks my confirmation number. Apparently, they are automatically cancelled if you're not checked in within 5 minutes. Obviously, this is outrageous, but I'm usually a very patient guy. I ask if I can book a new appointment. That's no good since it would have to be Monday or later, so I grab a coffee from across the street and return to sit inside the police station to try and solve this with some Googling while I slip into a more and more frantic state of frustration. I cannot find anywhere in the city that can fingerprint me before Monday. But here's what really pushed me over the edge. While I'm sitting there at this point 30 minutes past my appointment time, someone else comes in for fingerprints. She shows up 5 minutes early, they take her in immediately, and she's out before her appointment was even scheduled to begin. The entire thing took her about 2 minutes. I point out to the cop behind the glass, as politely as I can, that clearly someone could see me right now because her appointment is already over. Why can't I have the current slot? But the cop insists that since my appointment was cancelled, my registration info was no longer in the system and I cannot be seen today. That's when the idea comes to me, and I confirm with him that showing up early is not a problem because they would have my appointment and registration info in the system. You actually see where I'm going with this, so I quietly sit back down and take out my phone. About 10 minutes later, I calmly approach him again and say, "Hello, I have a new appointment to be fingerprinted. I'm about 72 hours early." I have never seen such an exasperated sigh in my life, but he checked my new confirmation number and everything was in order. Within 10 minutes, I was walking back out after getting fingerprinted. And the next one is another malicious compliance story, and this one is titled, "Speak the language, this is country." So my friend who is Vietnamese gets told, "Speak English, you're in America," all the damn time. It got quite annoying for him, so he eventually decided to do something about it. He looked up the Native American tribe whose tribe was originally on the land where he lives, went to the tribe's cultural center, told the elderly grandma working there that he was tired of being told to speak English in America and had her teach him how to say white person/outsider/non-native in the language, as well as some other curse words and whatnot. Apparently, this made that Native American granny's week because she went all out and really taught him a lot. And ever since any time some racist tells him to speak English in America, he says, "Well, why don't you speak the Native American's tribe language? We are in Native American tribes' lands. You damn Native American word for white person." That shocked Pikachu face he gets in response never gets old. They essentially completely freeze up for a few seconds before responding in entertaining ways, such as gasping for air, or pointing their finger angrily, or just turning and walking away. Eventually, the word spread among my group of friends, and quite a few of them, who as immigrants or even just people who speak a second language occasionally get also told this, are always chomping at the bit to get their chance to use this response. Every time some of them finally does, they immediately announce it to everyone they know, and it never really gets old. And yeah guys, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed the malicious compliance, and I will see you again tomorrow.